Joining me now is my former colleague, the one and only broadcaster, Piers Morgan. Known, of course, for his fearless and uncensored approach to debate, Piers has become a household name throughout the world, really, for his high-profile interviews with some of the most influential figures of our time. From sparring with Donald Trump to delving into the minds of the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Volodymyr Zelensky, Piers has consistently pushed the boundaries of journalism and shaped discourse both on and offline. He is trailblazing a new frontier now in the digital zeitgeist, reshaping the very core of global discourse through his YouTube channel, Piers Morgan Uncensored, which has become the fastest growing news YouTube channel in the world. Piers, did you like that intro?
I couldn't have written it better myself, Rosanna. Thank you.
It was almost like you fed me the lines. Look, it's really good to see you. How are you doing?
Well, congratulations on your new show, which I hear is doing great things over there. Some very exciting times for you. We miss you here, but the world, as you and I know, because of the digital space in particular, is a very small place these days.
It is indeed, and I want to come on to talk to you about that, because it was only this time last year exactly that you were congratulating me on launching a show in the UK, and now here we are doing something else, and both of us online. But I'll get to that, but of course, first, I want to start with the US, because I know you'll be following this debate that's going to happen between Harris and Trump tomorrow as closely as we are. And quite simply, Piers, who do you want to win?
Well, never mind who I want to win, because I'm not an American citizen, I'm not an American voter. I have a house in Los Angeles, so I've lived and worked out there for 20 years, but I never like to say who I personally want to win these things. What I would say is who I think will win. And I think that actually the momentum, which has been roaring away behind Kamala Harris since she replaced Joe Biden on the Democrat ticket, has now been moving inexorably back to Donald Trump. And the latest national poll in the New York Times says he's now 1% ahead of the national polling of likely voters. That's significant because Kamala Harris has had one hell of a honeymoon for the last few weeks, you know, doing hardly any interviews. I think one interview, hiding away, reading off teleprompters, having the coronation of the ticket presented to her on a plate, having the DNC convention, which was just a sealing of the coronation. But now things get real. And tomorrow night, she goes on stage for 90 minutes on live national American television in front of up to 100 million people. And there's no hiding place. And she's up against someone who I think, for all the good and bad you can say about Donald Trump, the one thing you can't deny is that he is one of the most effective and brutal debaters in world politics. So I fear that what's going to happen tomorrow is that Donald Trump is going to expose Kamala Harris's weaknesses to the world in a way she's been desperate to protect herself from having exposed.
I hear your point completely about the rest of the world not wanting to hear two limeys talking about who they want to win the US election. You and me being Brits, of course, you do have a bit of presence in America, I'll give you that. But, I mean, it does sound like you're intensely sceptical of Harris. Do you think she's got any strength at all?
Well, look, the assets are she's 20 years younger than Joe Biden, who was basically a walking corpse by the time he quit the race or was driven out by Nancy Pelosi and others. So she has that going for her. She's certainly articulate. She's intelligent. There's no question of that. I wouldn't denigrate her record as a politician or as a lawyer. It's very impressive. However, there's a reason that she was very unpopular as Joe Biden's vice president. There's a reason when she's run for higher office in the Democratic Party to be the nominee before, it failed and crashed and burned, is that actually beneath all the often very word salady stuff that she comes out with, there's not much substance. And the substance that's there on her record is pretty left-wing progressive socialist. And she may be desperately trying now to pretend she didn't say defund the police or, you know, didn't say that you shouldn't call illegal immigrants criminals and all these things. She's trying to reinvent the wheel about her own record and rhetoric. But unfortunately, the record is what it is. And I think that Trump will seize on that tomorrow. And he's already ahead in the latest national poll. And I think that will steam him forward, I suspect, to victory in November.
Look, I would love to talk to you more about the US election. There's too much ground to cover. I know we've only got you for a short amount of time. You're a busy man. But let's talk about that year that you've experienced as a broadcaster since you and I were I was launching the show last year in the UK in October. The events of October 7th happened. You and I saw each other every evening in the studio as you were doing this series of interviews with voices from Israel, voices from Palestine, voices from all over the world that were for or against either side. And it was a ride, I think, for you. I think it's fair to say. What was that year like? What did you learn?
Oh, it's been incredible. I mean, and what I learned is that there are very strong arguments on both sides of this whole Israel-Palestine debate going back to the 1940s. And to pretend otherwise is to dig your head in the sand and ignore history. And so I decided early on that I was going to try and be resolutely non-partisan. I wasn't going to take sides. I was going to platform everyone that had a big following in this space so they could either argue with me and I would hold them to account on their views, or they could argue with people who they were implacably opposed to. And I think that's what really resonated with people. People felt I was giving this enormous global news story a really fair shake when it came to how I reported it and presented it. And the debates we were holding really got huge numbers because people felt that they were not being told what to think on one side every day, as so many of the cable news networks around the world tend to do. They were getting both sides, and they were getting it in a passionate and very animated way, often very heated way. And of course, it was always going to be like that. This is a very heated and passionate debate and has been for many decades. So I think the tipping point for me in terms of the show and why I wanted to take it fully digital was the interview with Bassem Youssef, which went viral around the world, not least in the Middle East, and was watched by 22 million people on our YouTube channel. That was the moment I realised that linear television is very restrictive and that YouTube is now really the platform that the whole world is tuning into.
Look, a lot of that heat that you're talking about obviously came from online, from users of X, users of other social media platforms around the world. You're no stranger to handling that kind of instant feedback on social media. You've advised me in the past, in fact, on how to stay resilient in the face of online abuse, trolls, the public debate. But in terms of this issue in particular, have you seen anything to that extent before?
No, I mean, the relentless trolling from both sides, I have to say, if you deviate one iota from their preferred line of argument, has been unlike anything I've ever experienced. It's been extremely unpleasant. Everyone who's involved in the news business on screen will tell you they've had the same. But you have to ignore that. You have to ignore the noise, ignore the trolls, ignore the abuse, ignore the threats. And you have to stick resolutely to what the job of a journalist is, which is not to take sides in an issue like this, but to allow people who have strong arguments to come together and debate. That is the bedrock of a democracy. That is the bedrock of what a proper society should be like. And that is what I think we've achieved with Piers Morgan Uncensored. People say to me, I don't really know what you think. That's good. I don't want people to really know what I think about a particular issue in terms of taking a side. I want to allow both sides to debate. I think it's far healthier for society if we do that more.
I'm interested to get your views on the state of kind of online public debate, especially given the way X has gone. I don't know if you've noticed, Piers, my every move is, I don't expect you to, but I haven't been using X much recently. Of course. It's so unpleasant. It is deeply unpleasant. And a lot of politicians, a lot of famous people, potentially even John Cleese last night, it seems the British actor, have decided to leave X, along with Elton John, Stephen Fry, Whoopi Goldberg, to name a few. I mean, I think you'll be sticking around, but do you understand people wanting to leave?
Yeah, look, I do. As X has got bigger and bigger and bigger, I don't think it's just an Elon Musk issue. As it's got bigger and bigger as a platform, you're going to get more and more trolls, just law of averages. I have to say, I think the platform would be immeasurably improved if John Cleese did leave it. So that I will not be shedding any tears over, having had a few spats with him in the past. But no, look, I think it's not for the faint-hearted. And Elon Musk has done lots of good things in relation to free speech, I think. But he also has to do more, and I'm sure he would recognise this. He has to do more about the viciousness of some of these trolls. They shouldn't be allowed to make threats against people. They shouldn't be allowed to campaign and harass people in the way that so many of them do. And I hope Elon does do more to do that. I've talked to him about it, and I'm sure he will. But look, I think the truth is it's an unfettered platform, and you don't have to be on it. And I think that there are ways that you can mitigate the trolls. You don't have to allow people to follow you, for example. You can block them, you can mute them, you can do all that thing. It's a bit time-consuming, it's a bit laborious, and you'll still let the odd troll slip through the net. But I do think that fundamentally X is a platform for good. It remains my #1 news source, and it remains the place where I get the most ideas for arguments and debates. And I think for that reason, the good outweighs the bad.
Let me ask you, you said there that you've spoken to Musk. I know you have on several occasions, but in terms of landing that big sit-down interview, he's been a bit selective about who he speaks to and who he sits down. Will we ever get to see you do it?
He said he will, so let's see. I haven't got a date in the schedule yet, but I'm hopeful. I'd love to interview him. I think Elon Musk right now is an absolutely fascinating guy. I also think that despite his bad rep, which he gets from a section of people, that if you look at his record in totality, he's pretty much a force for good. You know, if you look at Tesla and what he's done for green cars, if you look at SpaceX and what that's been doing around the world, if you look at Neuralink and the extraordinary work that's doing in neuroscience. And if you look at his passionate support and defence of free speech, all these are good things. So he's not perfect, and he's a fascinatingly combative character, which I have no problem with. I'm like that myself. I would love to interview him at length and get inside that tremendous brain of his. But I met him down in Cannes at the Cannes Lions Advertising Festival, and he was incredibly fascinating. He talked about colonising Mars and how he would do it and why it's so important. I was mesmerised. So this is a guy who looks all the time way down to the future and wants to try and protect planet Earth from itself. And I think we should encourage people like him.
Just finally, Piers, I know you got a dash, but in terms of going online and then versus what's now called mainstream media or legacy media, is there still room for real journalism? Do you think it's being lost?
Oh, absolutely, there's room for real journalism. Yeah, I would say what we've done on Piers Morgan Uncensored in the last 2 years has been absolutely the epitome of real journalism, whether it's hosting fiery but revealing debates about world issues and big news stories, or whether it's me sitting down with Cristiano Ronaldo in the bombshell interview that led to him leaving Manchester United, going to Saudi Arabia, reinventing football in the Middle East. All these things are transformative. And, you know, I've done lots of big interviews, big debates and so on, which I would absolutely say are right up there with the very best ethos of good journalism. And I see lots of other people doing it in that space too. So it's, you know, it's a different kind of thing to conventional mainstream media. But mainstream media's had a few issues of its own in the last couple of decades. I think they've let themselves down many times by being too partisan without admitting it. I think by not doing their jobs properly as journalists. And I think what I like about the world of YouTube in particular, it is uncensored. You know, you can really say what you think. And I think that is good.
Look, Piers, I know it's not often you're on the receiving end of the questioning, so appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Well, best of luck with the show. I hear it's a big smash out there, so good luck.
Thanks, Piers. See you soon.